Folks, so I wanted to show you a few ways to think about how you might go about styling this navigation bar, and this also applies perhaps to a footer or another section that you might have at the bottom if you want like buttons for your links, for example. It'll be similar styling to this. So this is what we've got right now. We've just got our links here, in the nav. So let's look at how we can deal with that in CSS. What I'm going to do is do some styling on the nav section. And I'm going to start out by making it margin 0 and padding 0. And I'm going to give it a background color. Been using a kind of dark green here, I think. Try that. And I'm going to say overflow hidden. So anything that is outside the scope of my nav won't be displayed. And let's see what that does here. Okay, so gives me the green background, makes my links pretty hard to read because they're also green. But it also, and you can see it's very tight there, right? Like there's no space at all between the section and that nav bar. Same thing, no space between the aside and that nav bar, and then the padding, that H, serifs on that H are right up touching the edge there. So we set all those to 0. Okay. But besides giving us the green background, then that doesn't really do us a whole lot of good. And let's see. So what I really want to do is I want to turn these links into kind of like blocks or buttons. So to do that, right, I've got other link code in here for the CSS. So I don't want it to affect all my links, just those ones. So I'm going to say nav A. And what that does is it means it's going to apply this CSS only to A tags that are within nav tags. So it reads this way. And for these, I'm going to say give these padding of 10 pixels all around. That'll make them bigger. We want them to display as blocks versus as text, and that has to do with how the browser thinks of it as either like a string of text or an area of the page. And let's say text align center. So they'll be in the middle of those blocks. Let's see what that does. Okay, so to align them, we've got some padding. But they're not quite the blocks that I was hoping they would be. And that's because blocks is not a display type. Block is, excuse me. Save that, take another look. Oh, okay, so they're blocks, but because of that, they're no longer in line. They're on top of each other, and that might be interesting or super irritating. So the other thing we want to add here is a float left. So these are going to all be next to each other as well on the left side. And I want to add one other thing here too. I want to say nav a hover. So I have a unique hover state for those links in the navbar too. And here I'm going to change the background color. And for right now I'm just going to say white. So when I hover over them, they'll turn white, and you'll see what I mean when I say it's display block. All right, and so now we refresh. Okay, so those are back to being in a row. And now you see anywhere I hover in this whole padded area for that link is giving me the link, and the background white is showing me the whole block that it takes up. So that is a very user-friendly thing to do. This margin though, I don't like that. That feels a little tight to me, so I'm going to go back to my nav and adjust that margin. Let me see here, the top's okay, but I really want to put a bottom margin. So my top is going to be 0. The bottom I'm going to say is 10 pixels, and then side to side it'll be 0 as well. That's not what I expected. Have I been deceiving you all this time on what top, bottom, left, right is? Does it go clockwise? It does. Okay, so it's actually top, left, bottom, right. You can imagine it going around a circle. I might want more space than that. For now, that's fine. Okay, so that's one way to think about our navbar links. And again, you could do a similar thing for links in the footer. All right, so let's try a few more things here. I'd like, what if I want these to appear more as buttons, but not necessarily in a bar, right? So let's get rid of the background color in the nav, and let's put that background color, actually, I'll just copy and paste it here, from there to our A block. Okay, so that makes it shorter, but because these things are right next to each other, there's no gap between them. Okay, so what if here we say that we want a margin to the right of 20 pixels? Okay, so it's putting a gap to the right of this one, 20 pixels. There's also a gap here, but we can't see it because there's nothing else there. So now I've got more button-y kinds of things. So something else you might want is like, well, maybe I want these centered rather than over on the left there, right? So this is a bit more tricky. We can say text align center in our whole nav element, right? But that's not going to do anything because these are still floating to the left, right? And the float ignores all the other alignment formatting. But if we just take that out, right, we go back to this thing. So in terms of our display, what if we say inline block? All right, and so that's saying put these in one line so they're not on top of each other, but also use the block styling. Okay, so that's how I can make centered buttons that are individual. And again, if I wanted to, I could also take that background color, throw it back in the nav, and then I've got a bar with button centered. Those buttons are a bit hard to see now, right? So what to do about that? I could change the color between the background and the button itself, right? So I can make these buttons a lighter color. I can also give them a border. Like I did the full border on that section. For these buttons, I might just say, I only want borders on the left and the right, so I'm going to say border right, 1px solid white, and then border left, 1px solid white. And what I'm doing here, how this is working, you might have caught it in my auto completion there. This is the thickness of the border. This is whether it's like a solid line or a dashed line, and then this is the color in that order. So let's look at that. All right, so now I've got lighter buttons, also makes that text easier to see, and I've got a little line on the other side, making it really clear where those link buttons are. All right, so that's how to work with nav bars and perhaps your footer buttons as well.